World Cup for F4, which I quite like the sound of as well. Green flag flies, the cars released onto this warming up. That weather conditions today pretty much ideal. The road is dry, it's not that hot, the sun is breaking through, and the cars mainly get away, but you've spotted one that's stalled, I think.
Yes, and that is Jake Dennis.
Now, if everybody gets past him before he moves, he's going to have to start at the very back of the grid. So Jake Dennis is, I fear, about to give up that grid position. He's still not moved. He's still not moved. He was 7th on the grid, and he's going to need a push start by the look of it. And so everybody will get round him, and that means that Jake Dennis now is going to have to start from the very back of the grid. All the work in qualifying is now wasted.
So he was P7. That car there still stationary on the grid. As David has identified, that's going to need a push start. That means he's going to have to go to the back of the grid by virtue of the fact that every other member on the grid has gone past him. So they rush over to attend to the Jake Dennis cars. So the rest of the cars are on their way around the circuit.
May not even start at the back of the grid because the pit lane gate has opened. It might be that they push him into the pit lane and then let Carlin try and fire up the engine. Sorry, not Carlin, Freudian slip, Prema Power Team, ex of Carlin. And once the team have got the car going, then he might be able to join in from the end of the pit lane, but he's going to be flat last, come what may.
In any event, he is going to have an awful lot of work to do now. The Racing Steps Foundation driver, Jake Dennis, then, who we were talking to last night, absolutely doesn't fire up on the grid. His car, as you rightly say, is being pushed into the pit lane now. The cars continue and can just see them heading into our view from our commentary position, which is right on the start-finish line. So Prema have got a lot of work to do very, very quickly to get him even ready to go from the pit lane.
Absolutely. I mean, all they need to do is plug in a slave battery, and assuming there's not a bigger problem, then it should be okay. But as you rightly say, he will start from the pit lane at the very back. He's got a huge amount of work to do. You only get points in the top 10. There you go. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Trouble is now he has got something like 20-odd cars to pass before he can even sniff points. Up to the grid they will come then. Felix Rosenqvist for pole position.
Sometimes, though, this acts as a real motivator for a driver, doesn't it? We could see him carving his way through the field. It could be a supreme race from Jake Dennis now, but he really has got his work cut out.
Look, all he's going to need are a couple of safety car periods and a couple of tangles, and suddenly he's bought into a whole load of spots. So, you know, he's not out of the hunt totally, but it's going to be pretty difficult for him. Felix Rosenqvist is on pole position as he was yesterday, but he didn't make the best of starts on a wet road, and Antonio Giovinazzi was able to mug him coming out of the hairpin midway around lap 1. So Rosenqvist needs to get away well here. The grid forms up. There's going to be a space ahead of Marcus Pommer, which did occupy the car of Jake Dennis, so Marcus Pommer should be able to get a better getaway. In fact, Pommer also late coming back to his grid position because he was delayed getting away behind Jake Dennis as well. Did Marcus Pommer fail to get away, and is he going to have to start at the very back of the grid is my next thought, because if he also couldn't get going properly, then Pommer is going to be another man that will start from the rear. He's on the track, but Marcus Pommer is not. Oh, there he is now, coming into place. Yes, he has made it into his correct grid position. Still the back of the grid forms up. Julio Moreno has survived the warming up lap today, unlike yesterday, where he arrived at the end of it with broken suspension, and 33 Mahavir Raghunathan is there as well at the back of the grid. So we are all accounted for, even though Jake Dennis is in the pit lane. So it's round 5, it's 22 laps, it's 35 minutes, it's Felix Rosenqvist on pole position. It's the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, and it is just about set, ready to go. You know the score, 5 lights on, all lights out, blast off. There'll be an indication at the back of the grid to show that everybody is where they should be on a staggered grid for 30-plus cars. It stretches around the last corner, and the marshal with the green flag is there. So 1 light, 2, 3, 4, 5. Felix Rosenqvist accelerates away now. It's a better start than yesterday. Rosenqvist is going to be away strongly to lead. Charles Leclerc looks at the inside of him, thinks better of it, and slots in behind. Günther goes 3rd, 4th is Götz, and Giovinazzi 5th as they round turn 1 for the first time. Quite a few run wide, but nobody in any real strife. Up towards turn 2 they come, and Rosenqvist is trying to get away in a big lock up there from Maximilian Günther's orange Muka Motorsport car. He scrambles round the corner. You've also got Giovinazzi trying to find a way past Charles Leclerc for 4th as they head round the Parabolica for the first time. Up to the hairpin. Keep your eye on Giovinazzi on the next shot, because the yellow car's about to duck out from behind Callum Millett, I reckon, and go for position. There they are. Look, they're almost side by side in the background. Giovinazzi, the championship leader, on the inside line. Is he going to make a move? He does go up the inside, and he goes 4th. Giovinazzi gains a place. There's strife behind him, though. Cars get scattered every which way round the hairpin. and thankfully they have all survived. So it's a real harum-scarum first lap as the leaders work their way into the Mercedes arena. Giovinazzi only just hanging on to that fourth place, though.
Yeah, very much so. So Rosenqvist, as you said, doing exactly what he needed to do yesterday and didn't. He's done it today and leads. And there is Felix Rosenqvist through on shot now. P1, P2 is Charles Leclerc as the rest of the pack come through.
Rosenqvist is gapping Leclerc, then third is Gunter, fourth is Giovinazzi, fifth is Ilott. And the race leaders work their way from the Mercedes arena through the stadium for the first time up towards the completion of lap number 1. 3 safety cars yesterday in the wet, and despite the bit of contact we had midway round lap 1, I think pretty much everybody has continued in the race as Rosenqvist leads at the end of the first lap by already 1.1 seconds. So he's made good his escape on cold tyres, don't forget. That's where Formula 3 experience plays, because he knows what the car will do. He'll know what the tyre is capable of doing as well. Look at this for bravery, coming down towards turn 1, being squeezed up towards the pit wall. There was Dorian Boccolacci, but he managed to make it through and gain track position, running out wide there. Michele Beretta rattling over the curb. Boccolacci coming under attack from Sergio Sette Camara. Now let's try and have a look who it was that got the whack. It was 25, which means Lance Stroll was the one that was tagged into the incident by Santino Ferrucci. And others with damage. Who's that arriving on the scene with a broken wing end plate? Number 8, is it not? Which means Alessio Lorandi. He got the black and orange mechanical warning flag yesterday for mechanical dramas. And Lance Stroll, having been punted sideways, then couldn't hook a gear, could he? And everyone came streaming past him. That's Lorandi in the pit lane to have the nose sorted out. So Lorandi rejoins, but he's a long way down the order now.
So Jake Dennis having started from the pit lane, P31. So right at the back of the pack still. He's going to have a lot of work to do to get up the order. Will Jake Dennis, his car not starting on the grid. Everyone past him meant he had to start from the pit lane.
We have lost, I think, Arjun Maini somewhere on that first lap. He only needed 1 sector. But the race leader, making his way up towards the timing line now, Felix Rosenqvist, being chased by Charles Leclerc, has got a mighty advantage as they come through, because Rosenqvist's gap already is 1.6 seconds. It's game on third, isn't it here? Maximilian Gunter versus Antonio Giovinazzi, the championship leader. Now, this is where Giovinazzi shows, dare one say, the weakness in his makeup, because he's not consistently up there. OK, he did a pretty decent job at Silverstone, being on the podium across the weekend, but a win yesterday, and he's 4th at the moment. I know it's an ultra-competitive championship, but Giovinazzi needs to be a bit higher up than this 4th place, and he's got to be doing that in every race to score points.
Well, at the moment, Giovinazzi is chasing then around the parabolica. They go up towards the hairpin as Giovinazzi gets ever closer to Gunter ahead. And is he going to go for a move? He dives up the inside now. Is he going to make this stick? Is he carrying too much speed through the hairpin? Well, no, he isn't. He gets right alongside Gunter. Now, if he can make this stick going into the next section of the track, then Giovinazzi may do exactly what he needs to do and move up a further place. But they are absolutely side by side, these two. And Giovinazzi and Gunter then is not going to make it work. Giovinazzi did everything he could by throwing out the kitchen sink in that overtake manoeuvre, but he's just misplaced when that sequence of turns goes wrong for him.
He was on the outside line and it was never going to work, and what he couldn't do was get that switch back up the inside, so he's going to have to think about that all over again. You see the way that Hockenheim works. You start at one corner, the move finishes 3-4 bends later on. Yes. Giovinazzi, I think, owes Gunter a bit of respect for that, because he made that move up the inside and Gunter kind of gave him enough racing room to avoid any contact. It was looking a bit ominous. Here it is. Giovinazzi commits, but commits a bit late for my money for that move. And Gunter saw what was coming and thought, I'd better just steer out of this, otherwise we're going to interlock wheels. So they survive, which is good racecraft on both parts. But they survive to continue the battle, as the race leader, Felix Rosenqvist, is now 1.8 seconds ahead of Leclerc. This is good for Rosenqvist because he needs points back again in the title race. Giovinazzi, though, has fallen away into the clutches now of Callum Ilott. So how has he lost a big chunk of time? It must have been another effort that didn't work and he's gone off the road or lost ground. So we said yesterday that Giovinazzi is a spectacular driver. Sometimes he just goes the wrong side of that line of being spectacular and makes a mistake, and now he's got Ilott all over him.
Yes, and is Ilott going to have a go on Giovinazzi now? Will he dive up the inside? Giovinazzi fair closes that door. So Giovinazzi now has gone from being on the attack to being under attack, very much so now, because Ilott really is right all over him now. They are side by side. Giovinazzi is going to be in the right place for this turn, though. And as David mentioned, you know, overtakes have to be set up maybe 3-4 turns before you're actually going to execute it, because the sheer nature of this Hockenheim circuit, as Illett there, all his efforts come to naught as he runs very wide.
Now this, I think, is why Giovinazzi lost the ground.
Oh, yes.
It's a big, big moment, isn't it? Hooks the wheel over the curb, manages to hang on to it, but by going onto the run-off tarmac there, so he loses a big, big chunk of time. And Callum Illett, I think, also now having to play catch-up after his little mistake. I just wonder whether Illett was so close to Giovinazzi there, he lost downforce, and that's what forced him off the road briefly.
Car number 6 then, Michele Beretta, is under investigation for leaving the track and gaining an advantage, so we'll see what develops from that little message that has been brought to us from race control. That's Michele Beretta, who's running down there in the order in
20th.
P20.
Yeah. Callum Illett, meantime, is keeping at bay Santino Ferrucci. This is one of his better moments. You said pre-race that last year Ferrucci delivered on occasion. This is one of those occasions, so he's running strongly at the moment. Behind him, 7th is Palmer, 8th Menezes, 9th Albon, 10th Mikael Jensen. George Russell, who was a race winner at Silverstone, is currently in 11th place, having been clobbered in qualifying by Matt Solomon that interrupted both of their sessions. Now, who's the next aggressor in this little pack? It is Alex Albon, looking the black car, trying to get at the inside of the yellow Gustavo Menezes car in entry, but he couldn't quite do it. Albon raced well from the back of the grid yesterday after an off in Q1. The second qualifying session gives you a time for this race and the third race that will be on Sunday. But Alex Albon, new to Formula 3 this year, moving up from Formula Renault 2-litre racing. His dad, a former touring car racer as well, comes then now down from the Mercedes arena into the stadium. And a driving standards flag is going to be given to Santino Ferrucci, yes.
Be from the earlier incident we saw, won't it?
For contact on Lance Stroll. Now there is 27, which is Mikael Jensen. In, of course, the colours carried last year, that number and that livery by Felix Rosenqvist, just to complicate the issue. There is Santino Ferrucci, another driver switching teams. The gaps have opened up, though, between them, and the lead gap now, Rosenqvist and Leclerc, is 2.8 seconds. It's a bit harsh to say this for Felix Rosenqvist, but so it should be, because with all of that experience against a rookie,
yes,
he should be winning.
Yes. Well, he is, and he has that margin, so Rosenqvist looking comfortable at the moment with that 2.8 second advantage over Leclerc P2. So it's Rosenqvist, Leclerc is P2, then P3. It's Maximilian Günther. Here's the replay of the start then, David.
And Rosenqvist made an absolute perler of that. No mistakes today. Away nicely. Leclerc slots across to defend from Günther. But just have a look in the midfield as they dive down towards turn 1. Some get nowhere near the apex because they're on the outside line, and then they have to use all of that runoff area to get back onto the circuit.
You made the point yesterday that were that runoff area not there, well, we can see how many cars would be in strife, can't we?
Yeah, if that were grass, they'd be spinning. If it were gravel, they'd be ensnared. And so at least that means that they can get back onto the circuit. It's when you use that runoff tarmac as an advantage that the race officials get a bit squiffy. This is turn 2. Now, this was where it was a bit less well behaved. And in the garages at Prema Power Team, everybody's studying the pictures and looking moderately content for the moment. So they should as a team, because Felix Rosenqvist dominating at the moment. He's come across the timing line now, 6 laps of the 22 done, and the advantage is 3.2 seconds. Mercedes normally is a strong power unit around here, and that's being illustrated again now by Rosenqvist.
Yes, he's pulled out another 4/10, hasn't he? So looking very strong for him at the front at the moment. Felix Rosenqvist then leading the race. Charles Leclerc, P2, who has an advantage of just under 3 seconds over our P3 driver, Günther.
Callum Illett trying to shake off the challenge of Santino Ferrucci. There's Marcus Pommer in the Moto Park car. New team as well to the championship this year, which is interesting to see also. And Marcus Pommer starting to inch up onto the back of this little battle ahead of him. It's been a very busy start to the championship. 3 races at Silverstone, 3 here. Next stop in a fortnight is Po, where there will be more entries than spaces on the grid. So qualifying on the streets of Po is going to be absolutely frantic. It had to be split last year into two groups, odds and even numbers anyway, just to give people the chance of a clear lap. But it's going to be so important qualifying round Po.
And a very different circuit that you know well, but...
well, it's the first street circuit they will come to of the year.
Yeah.
It's narrow, it's hilly, it's a completely different proposition. And the most significant thing, as you look there at Menezes getting it wrong, is there is no runoff at all. You haven't got that luxury of making a mistake and being able to catch it. If you do that at Po, you're in the wall. Race leader Felix Rosenqvist is on his 8th lap, 7 in the book, goes through, and the gap is now 3.6 seconds over the opposition.
So Rosenqvist from Leclerc, Gunter, Giovinazzi, then it's Ilott, Ferrucci, Pommer and Menezes, with Olban and Jensen rolling out the top 10 then, as we look at our race leader Felix Rosenqvist, who got the start absolutely right today as he goes around the Parabolica. And super slow-mo of Felix Rosenqvist at work then in his car. And as David made the point, he should be leading by the margin he is now, when you consider that the experience that Felix Rosenqvist has in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Different team for this year, and perhaps the dynamics of the team working better for Felix Rosenqvist. As here a battle continues between Gustavo Menezes and the car of Alexander Albon.
So that's for 8th. Menezes, the American, Albon, the British driver, keeping at bay in the background. Mikael Jensen, as the leaders work their way then now through the stadium. Giovinazzi has just done the best middle sector of anybody in the race, so he's starting to wake up again.
Boccolacci got a drive-through penalty, David.
For
infringement of Article 37.5. The Oracle will check Article 37.5 as we speak. So, drive-through penalty to come for car number 20, driven by Dorian Boccolacci. He will have to take that drive-through penalty within 3 laps of that having been awarded. 8 out of 22. So we look at the car of Gustavo Menezes then, who at the moment has Albon under control. Just a little bit of a margin between himself and the chasing Albon in P9. Menezes at P8. And then it's Mikael Jensen and then George Russell down there in P11 at the moment. George Russell, the racer from North Norfolk, here at Hockenheim in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. So that drive-through penalty brought about by an infringement of Article 37.5, which is...
when leaving the grid, all drivers must respect the pit lane speed limit until they pass pole position, and marshals will be instructed to push any car or cars which remain on the grid into the pit lane by the fastest route immediately after cars able to do so have left the grid. Any driver being pushed from the grid may not attempt to start the car and must follow the instructions of the marshals. Now, either, because we were watching Jake Dennis, either, therefore, Boccolacci was too quick away from his grid position or needed a push, but got the car going and continued on the green flag lap rather than going to the pit lane. But I confess I was so focused on Jake Dennis's plight, I wasn't watching him.
Fair enough.
But it was for the way that he left the grid, either of his own speed, his own steam, or with a push. So Boccolacci will have a drive-through penalty. And it was Gustavo Menezes, wasn't it, that suffered that in the last round, similar incident.
Yes.
Back here last year. There is Menezes going stronger. He was with Van Amersfoort last year. He's with Carlin this year. And the loquacious American, who was a podium finisher at Spa midway through last season, is certainly somebody that this year ought to be winning races. But Felix Rosenqvist is going to rather spoil our different winners pattern, isn't he? Because he's going to be the first double victor of the season, seemingly. And the way that he's going, yes, OK, he is such an experienced driver and he's pretty successful as well. But it's been a very impressive run, this, because he's way, way clear of anybody else.
Yes, he is. 4.1 second margin that he's built up in the lead over Charles Leclerc then.
Leclerc from Gunter from Ilott as the rookies. One of the Muka cars there going way wide. And that was all the legacy of George Russell moving up past Mikael Jensen. Jensen then trying to fight back. Have another look at it. George Russell here breaks into the top 10, into the points. That's important for him. And Mikkel Jensen couldn't kind of get back underneath, could he? So he just had to steer out of it in the end.
That was a brilliant move by George. He carried a lot of speed there, but was able to, maintain it, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And good move from George Russell then.
As you're looking at these replays in the pit lane, there is a familiar sight in F3, which is of a Deutsche Post overalled marshal running down the pit lane. All that means that there is a message, a bulletin from the race director to the team, which is normally to do with penalties, and that has to be signed for by the team, and then it can be actioned upon. I think this is all still to do with Boccolacci. It's on the screen, but the team need a written notification of it. But on more than one occasion in a Formula 3 season, we have reference to these marshals, the runners, delivering the bad news. Gustavo Menezes, in the meantime, is in 8th. Alex Albon has dropped back a bit. I just wonder whether George Russell might be able to close on him before the very end. Good fight there. Brandon Marzano keeping at bay the car of Fabian Schiller. Schiller driving for Westtech, and Marzano is another of the Prema Power Team drivers. Westtech's come on a pace this year, and Fabian Schiller up the inside, going to the Parabolica. He's got to get his nose in front and make the move now, and he has done, otherwise he'd be on the wrong line for the hairpin. But Marzano gets into the slipstream, gets the draft, pulls out, goes back up the inside into the hairpin. Now Schiller wants the switch back on the inside, can't do it. So it changes back again. Good racing that. Marzano hanging on to 12th place. Schiller has not given up, though. Into the Mercedes arena they come. So Marzano turns through. He's going to try and cover the line as best he can. Schiller looking the quicker of the two here, but Brandon Marzano, having to be so busy defending, is going to inevitably take the slower line as a result of all of that. Mikkel Jensen up the road, therefore, is safe for the moment because these two are still squabbling. And these two squabbling, as we see, running wide there, but able to gather it all up. It's a bit of a battle going on between Prema Power Team and the Gavin Wills run, Team Westtech, isn't it? As we look at our race leader, Felix Rosenqvist, who extends his lead now up to just a shade under 5 seconds over Charles Leclerc in P2. P3 still the way of Gunther. Leclerc in super slow-mo, working the Hankook tyres hard as he turns through the hairpin. The Van Amersfoort racing car in 2nd spot. Charles Leclerc, also the leading rookie in this race. And again in super slow-mo, drifting it up onto the curbs. That, I just wonder, it might be too far the wrong side of the white line with all 4 wheels, but nothing has come up on the screen as yet. To be fair, unlike some races last year in Formula 3, where the entire time was spent revealing track limit penalties and warnings, we haven't had, touch wood, one. No, they have been far better disciplined this year. You're right, the message is getting through, and it's also happening in domestic racing. There are less warnings about it. People do seem to be, on the whole, driving better. We got into the pit lane Ryan Tveter, incidentally, for Carlin's Dragonia I Am squad. He was a retirement yesterday with broken suspension. The race leaders turning their way through. There is Tveter. Another driver that we lost yesterday, Nicholas Beer, not in today's race. He was a bit shaken about yesterday. Yes, he was. So we wish him well. But I think Ryan Tveter's race may be at an end. Side bodywork coming off. The team needing access to the engine bay and to the radiators. So Ryan Tveter, if he does go back out, it will only be as a glorified test session. So Felix Rosenqvist is on his 13th lap out of the 22, and this is just a demonstration drive, isn't it, in how to win in a Formula 3 car, because he's under absolutely no pressure. There's nobody around him to fight against, and Rosenqvist just has to keep the car in the lead, keep it away from the curbs, and take the points. 10 laps left to run in this race, and Felix Rosenqvist now with a 5.2 second margin around the hairpin he goes. And as David has quite rightly said, he is under absolutely no pressure other than just maintaining his pace and keeping it clean and tidy. He should be heading all the way to the checkered flag. That's right. So Felix Rosenqvist will want the win, but he'll want the points as well. And where this becomes interesting, of course, is that his opposition, championship leader Antonio Giovinazzi, is only running in 4th place at the moment. So Giovinazzi could do with getting himself onto the podium once again, because it's more points and it's all very useful. And as we were saying in yesterday's race, over a 33 race campaign, you've got to keep scoring and scoring well. Well, interestingly, Giovinazzi, who had a go on Maximilian Gunther earlier on in the race, he's now beginning to reel him in once again. The gap is beginning to come down between these two, so I wonder whether another charge is going to come from Giovinazzi. Possibly. If it doesn't, he'll be off the podium for the first time this year. Charles Leclerc had a couple of podium finishes, won a win at Silverstone. Felix Rosenqvist, and there is a Prema Power Team car, is it? No, it's a Motor Park car facing the wrong way. Mahavir Raghunathan is in strife. The Indian driver is going to be able to get himself going. Just enough lock. Raghunathan was off at the hairpin, but whether he fell or whether he was pushed, we might get a replay of. So here is the answer, and he turns up the inside and just loses it. Too much speed. He tried to turn without the car having scrubbed off enough speed, and there just wasn't the traction there to do that. So in he comes, drifts, slides, spins, and Kang Ling, the Chinese driver, is the man on the outside who thinks, yes, and gets away with it because he managed to steer left. Yeah, yes. Quite. But he knew exactly what was going to happen there. Also running very, very wide, 19, Matt Solomon, and also running wide, Mahavir Raghunathan, who we have just seen. So he's in the wars a little here. And is this a replay? Yes, it is. It's not live, but it's another error, and he's having a stern word with himself.
Yes, he is, rather.
Right. Meanwhile, back at the front, Felix Rosenqvist leading this man, Charles Leclerc, who's getting ever more cavalier, and Giovinazzi with a lot of speed in the background there, still chasing after Max Günther.
I think this is going to be battle on once again shortly for P3.
He's taken 3/10 out in the middle sector. Trouble is, and we say it every race nearly, the closer you get to be able to attack, you end up in the dirty airflow, which compromises your aero, which means you go slower. So you've got to be massively brave and opportunistic and come from quite a long way back, which really is where that Parabolica run helps.
Yes.
A good run out of turn 2, you get in the slipstream, you've got the speed, dive up the inside of the hairpin, but then you've got to be able to slow down the car and make the move stick. Sounds easy, doesn't it?
It does, rather. You've described it perfectly. So Maximilian Günther then we watch now with Antonio Giovinazzi hard chasing then, and it is the Parabolica right now, and Giovinazzi got, well, quite a bit to make up here as they head towards the hairpin around the Parabolica. This is where Giovinazzi needs to get ever closer without compromising the aero, as David has said, but Günther has it all under control, brakes nicely, hits the apex of the hairpin, and off he goes with Giovinazzi now, once again getting ever closer.
But he wasn't close enough where he needed to be, and that's what spoils it. Now, who's this doing bizarre things for Mucca? Is that Ferrucci or is that Beretta? It is Beretta. Gets it back on, thankfully, just ahead there of Nicolas Pola. So there's Charles Leclerc, and there's your third and fourth situation. It's interesting, isn't it, how you're comparing now a Mercedes engine car to a Volkswagen engine car, and it does seem as though the Mercedes has the grunt and the Volkswagen's got the advantage through the twiddly bits.
Yes, I think you're right. So Giovinazzi then continuing to chase down Maximilian Günther ahead then. This is the battle for P3. And as they round the final turn and head towards the timing line, Rosenqvist with some 6.8 margin over Charles Leclerc. We can just see him picture there before we get to this battle for P3, which is there's under a second's margin. It's just between Günther and Giovinazzi. Just wonder whether Leclerc is just losing out a little bit here, and whether Günther, in his knowing that Giovinazzi is on the chase, is just turned the wick up a little bit.
The key is going to be this middle sector, because this is where the power of the Mercedes engine, I would have thought, would come into play. Last lap through, Leclerc was fractionally quicker than Günther. That yellow line is the speed trap. It'll be interesting to see post-race what the speed trap figures tell us. But there under braking, Giovinazzi closing back up. In fact, that time around, as they work their way through the hairpin, the Volkswagen car looking a lot better place than it was a lap ago. 6th and 7th, Ferrucci ahead of Pommer. Callum Millett is the driver in 5th in the Red Bull colours. He's run out of playmates now. There is 34, which is Marcus Pommer. Now, as far as Giovinazzi is concerned, we're not looking at him on screen, trying to catch sight of him out of the window of the box, because he's lost ground again relative to Günther. There it is. So they work their way into the stadium, still being chased by Callum Millett. The race leader now on lap 16 out of the 22. We've got 10 minutes to go, and I think we're going to be on for laps rather than time today.
Yes, order on the screen for you then, as Felix Rosenqvist leads by that extremely healthy margin of jolly near 7.5 seconds, which, to be fair to the point that you made earlier on, in all honesty, it is what Rosenqvist should be doing versus a rookie, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. And I talk about him being third in the championship coming into this race. It would have been better than that, but for losing 2 pole positions because of a wing infringement. It was damaged, it dropped, it broke the regulations. As a consequence, it put him to the back of the grid for the 2 Sunday Silverstone races, and therefore he had a lot of overtaking to do. Had he started from his rightful grid position and translated that, he'd have been even further ahead on points. And to be fair to Felix, that's a team issue, isn't it? It's not his driving. No, you know, he did jolly well to do what he did from the very back of the grid. Yeah, it was damage limitation. He made the best of it, but yes, you could argue it was his fault because he hit a curb that broke it and made it drop, but it wasn't a deliberate cheat. You're absolutely right. So Rosenqvist the leader, Charles Leclerc second, and Max Günther heading for a best yet, I think I'm right in saying. Yes, it will be the first time we've had him on the podium in third place as an overall podium finisher. He was on the rookie podium yesterday, but Giovinazzi has not given up yet, has he? Here they are, and Antonio Giovinazzi is having another push now to try and get himself onto the back of Max Günther as they work their way through the Mercedes arena once again, into the stadium once again. Giovinazzi is running out of laps. Through the Sachs curve they come up towards the end of lap number 17. You get the impression he's really pushing now. But Giovinazzi has done enough Formula 3 racing to know that all he can do now is either be hugely opportunistic or try and force a mistake out of Günther. And if you can just delay him by a fraction of a second, that might be an opportunity. And a bit of curb rattling at turn 1 there was exactly what Giovinazzi is after. He's now closed enough going up to turn 2. Now heading to the Parabolica, he's close. But if he can stay in the slipstream, then he's got an opportunity. Not convinced he's close enough yet, but if the slipstream carries him closer, 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 and it is doing, then he's going to be able to perhaps dive up the inside. This is crucial for third. That's a very strong defence by Günther. To the outside line goes Giovinazzi. If Günther outbreaks him, he might run wide. He does, but with Giovinazzi being on the outside, he's got to go for the switchback, which he does. They're absolutely side by side. Down to the Mercedes arena. Giovinazzi will make this work. He's done it. He's on the inside. He's ahead. And that was absolutely great stuff because he knew exactly what he had to do. He had one shot at it. The slipstream was critical, but he's not done yet. He's got to cover this line and make sure Günther doesn't get up the inside. Job done. Absolutely brilliant from Antonio Giovinazzi then. He did set that up utterly perfectly, and Günther did try and come back, but Giovinazzi had got it covered. Here it is again in replay. So Günther covered that line so early in the Parabolica, and then Giovinazzi just had to run a little bit wide, but he was carrying more momentum. That got him right alongside him and just ahead, which is what he needed because he was able to get his nose in front. Günther, to be fair, ran a bit wide, clattered over the curbs, didn't he? Yeah. And Giovinazzi got that job done and did it really, really well. And he'd also positioned himself exactly where Günther kind of had to be. And as Günther sorted out his curb rattling and saw Giovinazzi, there wasn't really anything else he could do there. He had to let Giovinazzi stay on that line, and so Günther off the podium, Giovinazzi back onto a podium finishing position, which will keep his record going for the year. Good for the championship for him as well. Gosh, it's taken him a long time to make that move, but make it he has, and let's assume that he stays there. It will put him back onto the podium and give him another points haul, a good points haul in this 5th round of the championship, in which we will have our first double winner of the season. Felix Rosenqvist is leading the way, and now we are on to lap number 19. 22 lap race. Is there anything else that's going to be sorted out before the very end? Günther has lost that place to Giovinazzi, but he's still 5 seconds up the road relative to Callum Ilott. So I don't think Callum is going to catch unless Günther makes a mistake. Behind Günther is Ferrucci. Behind Ferrucci is Marcus Pommer. And then it will be Gustavo Menezes some way back in the next of the Jagonia I Am cars run by Trevor Carlin's eponymous team. There is Callum Ilott. In fact, he's not that far ahead of Ferrucci, is he? No. That's a gap that's come down. It was 1.6 seconds at the start of this lap. Ferrucci was a 10th quicker in sector 1. He was 9/10ths quicker in sector 2. So Callum Ilott here is struggling, but Ferrucci locks up. That will compromise him. So just as you think one driver is on a march, they trip themselves up a little. Oh, and there, way wide in the background, was that Schiller possibly? It was one of the Westec cars, I think, going very, very wide indeed. Not Schiller, because there he is ahead. But Raoul Hyman, his teammate, I think it was, in the background, making a small error. Yes, Raoul Hyman, who went off into the gravel yesterday. So this is Schiller, 13th on the back of Mikael Jensen, the Dane in the orange Muka Motorsport car. Out of the final corner, over the timing line, and the race leader is now on lap 20 out of 22.
So as we continue to watch this battle then, as it rages for P12 on the grid. George Russell has got himself into the points. He is P10. Just looking down the order to see what has happened to Jake Dennis. David is up to P18.
All that effort, no points. Got to be in the top 10. It doesn't seem fair in some respects, does it? You know, you try all that effort to make something out of the race, but it, again, illustrates why you've got to be consistent with points being on offer to only the top 10 cars out of a 30-plus grid. So, into the Mercedes arena comes Callum Ilott, Ferrucci, and then Marcus Pommer up behind him. Felix Rosenqvist, in the meantime, has managed to catch some traffic. You don't find Lapri that often in Formula 3, but it's one of the T-Sport cars, I think, that he's about to have to sort out coming up towards the timing line. He will, in a moment... No, it's the Motor Park car. I'll tell you what, I get past Mahir Raghunathan.
Not making it easy for him, is he?
No, I mean, Raghunathan is trying to drive his own race and thinks, well, I've got a playmate. Well, no, you haven't. That said, I'm trying to find a blue flag for him at the moment. The message should get through that the race leader is behind you, but Raghunathan should be looking for blue flags as well. Jake Dennis versus... Who was that getting crossed up? Hongwei Cao, the Chinese driver. Or Fortec Motorsports. Big slide. But Jake Dennis then upper place, 17th. Woohoo.
Yeah.
But it's another place gained, at least. In fairness to Jake, he's doing the overtaking, and that's not that easy.
So blue flag is being shown now to car number 33. And indeed, Felix Rosenqvist has managed to get past that back-marking car. So Jake Dennis then unhindered then as he continues his march towards the checkered flag with an 8.8 second margin over Charles Leclerc in P2.
There's Marcus Pommer in 34 for Motor Park, making his way now in still 7th place on the tail of Ferrucci, but actually he's lost a couple of lengths, I would propose, over that last lap. Right, now that Felix Rosenqvist has got past Mahir Raghunathan, he is making good his escape once again, and of course others are going to have to come across that car. I'm not sure that by the end this 5, 6, 7 place battle will have to get past Raghunathan, but even so the battle is not resolved yet. The leader is on his last lap then. Felix Rosenqvist goes through. In 2nd place is Charles Leclerc. In 3rd is Antonio Giovinazzi, who I tell you what has really scarpered, having got past Max Günther. He's 3 seconds ahead. And then Ilott goes through, chased by Ferrucci, chased by Pommer. Top 7 all go through, and as I say, they might just have to sort out Mahir Raghunathan on this last lap. There's the leader, Felix Rosenqvist.
And look at his pace in comparison to Raghunathan that he had to get past as a back-marking car. You can see just how up the road Felix Rosenqvist has gone. You know, absolutely supreme driving from Felix Rosenqvist with a start that was exactly what he needed to do. And from there, he has completely and totally delivered with the experience that he has.
Indeed so. He knows the circuit, he knows what the car will do, he knows what the engine will do, he knows what the tyre will do. He's new to Prema Power Team, but he brings, of course, all of his experience and ways of doing things learnt from other teams. He knows, of course, that Prema is one of the top squads, and it seems to have been a good alliance. 2 victories in 5 races. A big lock up there from Raghunathan, and as he scrabbled round the corner ahead of Charles Leclerc, the last thing race-leading cars need is for a back marker to do something silly ahead of them. So Raghunathan survives, I think. Felix Rosenqvist takes a 2nd win of the year. Round 5 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship is won by the Swede. Felix Rosenqvist, the winner. Charles Leclerc comes through for a distant 2nd. And Antonio Giovinazzi is on the podium once again. It is a 100% record of finishing in the top 3 in the first 5 races of the year. 4th, Max Günther. 5th will be Callum Ilott for his best finish yet, ahead of Santino Ferrucci. And 7th should have been Marcus Pommer, but he has slowed right down, and so Gustavo Menezes is going to get 7th. 8th across the line is going to be Alex Albon. 9th is George Russell, and 10th is Brandon Maisano. And Marcus Pommer, almost within sight of the flag, has ground to almost a complete halt. He's crawling through the stadium. Something has gone badly wrong in the last couple of corners, and he's not yet made it to the line, Dave.
No. So, you know, clearly an issue there. And Well, no issue for that man. And there is the number 34 car of Marcus Pommer.
He's got across the line in 17th place,
Good
having
grief.
been running in 7th. So 10 places lost in the last couple of corners. And I'm not quite sure why, because he's managed to limp it to the flag. There's nothing obvious from the problem with the car. Anyway, we'll research in time for race 3, but Marcus Pommer loses points. Did that help Jake Dennis? It did. It gave him 15th in the end. Still not in the points, but anyway, he overtook half the field.
He did.
That's something to be cheered about. Felix Rosenqvist, a 2nd victory of the season then. And Charles Leclerc, another good result in 2nd spot. He's becoming a very impressive rookie, isn't he,
Yes,
Charles
he
Leclerc?
is.
I know he
Yes,
had
he
his
is.
dramas in the first Silverstone race, but he's had a win. He's been on the podium since as well. Looking good. Charles Leclerc will be the winning rookie as well from Max Günther and Callum Ilott. So there you've got the race winner, Felix Rosenqvist, and that will bring him back into contention in the championship. It's going to be a very interesting season, this. It may not have quite the same sparkle with so far protagonists for the title being regular F3 racers. Well, you have got Charles Leclerc in the mix as well, but even so, it's going to be a fascinating year. At the moment, it's between Rosenqvist and Giovinazzi, really. There is Marcus Pommer. He'd slowed in the stadium, but then he sort of picks up speed at the end. A little. And gets almost like you have to sort of switch the engine off, reset it, and it bursts back into life again. But very odd. Kept out of everybody's way, and at his reduced pace, like it was in limp home mode,
Yes.
heads up towards the line. Very, very strange. The Moto Park car then does get to the flag, but curious. Curious. So Felix Rosenqvist crushes the opposition. It's a win for Prema Power Team, 2nd for Van Amersfoort, Charles Leclerc, 3rd for Carlin, Antonio Giovinazzi, and that makes it now 3-2 as far as wins are concerned, Volkswagen and Mercedes. Felix Rosenqvist is delighted with that because that brings him back into the mix in the championship after his 2 struggles at Silverstone. And his demeanour has changed, hasn't it? Last year he was the man that looked a bit sort of hangdog look, really, because he knew that things weren't as they should have been for his season at Muka Motorsport, and he was always trying to work out why, where the pace was, where the setup problems were, and it didn't really click for him.
Isn't it interesting, the difference in team dynamics and how that just may have made a difference, perhaps? So there, for me, another fantastic drive from Antonio Giovinazzi.
Worked hard for that. It was only 1 place, wasn't it? But boy, he had to work for it for the bulk of the race. The results of round 5 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship headed home by Felix Rosenqvist and Charles Leclerc and Antonio Giovinazzi for the podium. Max Günther 4th ahead of Callum Ilott and Santino Ferrucci, with Menezes, Albon, then Russell and Maisano rounding out the point scorers. Mikkel Jensen 11th ahead of Schiller, Hyman, Stroll, Dennis, Rao, Pommer, Cow, McLeod and Pietro Fittipaldi in 20th, after which Tatiana Calderon was 21st ahead of Nabil Jeffrey, Pola, Beretta, Camara, Solomon, Moreno, Ling, Lee and Lorandi. Rounding out the top 30, a lap back, Mahavir Raghunathan after his Lapri and Dorian Boccolacci after his drive-through, with the retirements being Ryan Tfita. And also, we lost early on in that race, Arjun Maini. Felix Rosenqvist takes win number 2 of the championship season, and he does it by 9 seconds. He leaves people in no doubt that he's on a mission this year.
Yes, that's a very, very resounding win for Felix Rosenqvist, as we see him celebrate once again and go to his team and his engineers, who have seen him produce a stunning drive from Felix Rosenqvist, and will be on the top step of the podium in just moments from now.